It is 2 p.m. in New York, 7 in London, and 4 on a Monday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is ARIRANG, Korea's only global network. South Korea has announced the dates for its upcoming military drills with the United States. But will they be threatened by the fact that they coincide with the two Koreas' planned resumption of reunions for families separated by the Korean War? ARIRANG News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
South Korea and the United States will begin their annual joint military drills in the last week of February, a plan that could jeopardize an earlier inter-Korean agreement to resume long-suspended reunions for families separated by the Korean War.
The ROK-U.S. Combined Forces Command will hold the Key Resolve exercises, an annual defense training drill, from February 24th to March 6th. We also plan to hold the Foal Eagle exercises, which also take place every year from February 24th to April 18th.
The dates coincide with the upcoming family reunions, scheduled for February 20th to the 25th at North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort. The Defense Ministry said Pyongyang was informed of the dates on Sunday, but has not yet reacted to the plans. North Korea has, however, previously threatened to scrap the reunions should the South go ahead with the military exercises.
We're clearly stating that dialogue and invasive war games can never coexist, nor can reconciliation and conflict.
South Korea's Unification Ministry reiterated Monday the drills involving tens of thousands of troops are defensive in nature and should not disrupt plans for family reunions.
We have repeatedly explained that the Key Resolve exercises are annual defense training drills that will be conducted separately from the family reunion event. The South Korean government thinks the reunions must take place as planned, no matter what.
Millions of Koreans were separated from their families during the Korean War more than 6 decades ago, and some 70,000 South Koreans, most of whom are now in their 80s, are on a waiting list to see their loved ones one last time. Amid the uncertainty, South Korea has been preparing for the reunion event since last week. The Unification Ministry said that although Mount Kumgang saw over 1 meter of snow over the weekend, snowplows sent by South Korea have already removed most of the snow that's accumulated at the prospective reunion site. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
North Korea appears as though it is ready to conduct its 4th nuclear test, although no imminent signs of a test have been detected. South Korea's Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin told lawmakers on this Monday that preparations for a test at North Korea's main underground nuclear site in Punggye-ri appear to be complete. Now, the site was used for the regime's 3rd nuclear test last year. Kim also noted that the North is in the early stages of preparing for a long-range missile launch at its northwest test site in Dongchang-ri. The minister said the South Korean military is keeping a close watch on the movement, saying that history has shown there is a connection between the North long-range missile tests and its nuclear tests. And there at the National Assembly, South Korea's rival parties are debating how to go about achieving reunification with North Korea at the National Assembly this Monday. Now, on the second day of a 4-day hearing, lawmakers are questioning members of President Park's cabinet about the government's specific plans for reunification. In a press conference last month, the president said a unified Korea would be like hitting the jackpot. Ruling party lawmakers support President Park's reunification rhetoric and projects such as creating a world peace park in the demilitarized zone. However, opposition lawmakers say they oppose reunification where the South absorbs the North following an abrupt collapse and are calling for public consensus on how to achieve reunification. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is scheduled to be in Seoul this week to discuss the inter-Korean situation and pending bilateral issues. Seoul's foreign ministry said Monday that Kerry will spend the first 2 days of a 6-day trip to Asia and the Middle East that starts Thursday right here in South Korea. Now, Kerry is expected to meet with Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and discuss ways for the countries to expand the cooperation on regional and global issues and continue their close coordination on North Korea. Analysts say the two will also likely discuss ways to prevent possible provocations from the north during upcoming annual training exercises between the militaries of the two countries slated for late this month. This is Kerry's first visit to South Korea since his last visit in April. And also visiting South Korea will be a former Japanese prime minister who apologized for Japan's colonization and wartime atrocities against Korea. And he comes this week. Representative Chung Jin-soo of Korea's minor opposition Justice Party confirmed Sunday that Tomichi Murayama would be arriving for a 3-day visit on Tuesday and that he intends to meet with President Park Geun-hye. The presidential office has yet to confirm the two will meet, but watchers say a meeting could serve to ease territorial and historical tensions between the two countries. Attention is also focused on whether Murayama will convey current Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's position to President Park. During his trip, Murayama will speak at the National Assembly on Korea-Japan relations on Wednesday and will meet with Lee Hee-ho, the wife of late President Kim Dae-jung, on the last day of his trip. A delegation from South Korean consortium will visit North Korea this week for a field study on a joint railway project between Pyongyang and Moscow. Now, watchers say that although North Korea continues to call on Seoul to halt its upcoming joint military drills with Washington, there are signs that Pyongyang really does want to try and get along. Connie Kim reports.
The South Korean delegation's visit to the north comes amid increasing hopes that chilly ties between the Koreas are beginning to warm. A consortium of the state-run rail operator Korail, steelmaker POSCO, and Hyundai Merchant Marine will dispatch 18 experts to North Korea's northeastern port city Najin on Tuesday. Seoul officials say the experts will invest in a rail link between North Korea and Russia. The experts will fly to North Korea from Vladivostok, with Russian officials also taking part in the project. The envisioned 54-kilometer railway will run between the Russian border town of Kasan and the North Korean city of Najin. South Korea's involvement represents part of Park Geun-hye's push to link energy and logistics infrastructure across the continent. She agreed to support the joint railway project during summit talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Seoul last November. The North's recent peace offensive comes despite Pyongyang's recent call on Seoul to halt its upcoming joint military drills with the U.S. North Korea issued a statement last Thursday saying that reconciliation and provocations cannot coexist, using the example of the upcoming inter-Korean family reunions, which are due to start next week, and the drills, which Pyongyang says are practice for war. In another sign of slow warming of ties, the two Koreas also agreed last Friday to establish an internet network at their joint Kaesong Industrial Complex. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
With rapid changes in the global economy, up-to-date business and financial news has never been more essential. See what's making markets tick around the globe. We speak to the experts and cover the biggest financial stories.
North Korea provocation.
Quite good. We received a lot of positive feedback, especially from those abroad.
President Park Geun-hye has again called for reforms at public companies and sent out a strong warning to anyone who tries to sabotage the reforms. Now, during a meeting of the president's senior secretaries earlier this Monday morning, President Park criticized state-owned companies for their lax management and called for reform. The Korean leader pointed out that a number of public enterprises that are deeply in debt have still offered their employees excessive benefits, even covering the tuition at foreign universities for some of their employees' kids. She pledged to hold responsible anyone who tries to sabotage the reforms and said she is particularly concerned about a recent move by unionists at some of the firms to oppose them. She said the public companies need to regain the public trust by being proactive with their reform plans. The Korean government is aiming to toughen penalties on companies found leaking client data or using it to advance their businesses. This is the latest measure in the government's response to the largest ever personal information leak that still has many rattled. Our UDN has the details.
The ruling Saenuri Party and government financial agencies have unveiled a proposal for a set of preventive measures against future data leaks. This as the nation continues to cope with the fallout from the massive leak of personal information from the country's 3 major credit card companies last month. The proposed plan strengthens the penalties on financial institutions found guilty of leaking or illegally distributing client information to third parties. Under the plan, those found guilty of leaking information would face up to 10 years in prison or a fine of $470,000. That's 3 years longer and 10 times the amount of the current penalties. In addition, those found guilty of using client data to enhance their business activities would be forced to pay a fine that's equivalent to up to 1% of their net sales. Going forward, financial companies and institutions would be required to delete client data within 5 years of a client's last transaction. The proposal must now go through the National Assembly, but if passed, will be implemented in the second half of the year. Last month's information leak was the 3rd largest in global history, with 104 million people affected. The leak prompted more than 2.5 million people to cancel cards or have them reissued. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
And looking at how the Korean shares closed here in Seoul, shares closed flat on Monday as a strong rally in shipbuilders offset foreign capital outflows, which resumed following a brief pause last week. While sentiment toward riskier assets remained weak after mixed U.S. jobs report on Friday. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi finished 0.04% higher at 1923, while the Tech-Heavy Kosdaq closed higher by 0.8%. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency closed stronger against the greenback at 1,071 won. And we now turn to Sochi. Korea's largest ever delegation is in Russia for the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics, and they are aiming to show the world what they've got. While a handful are hopeful about bringing home a gold medal or any kind of color, that is, quite a few are looking 4 years ahead to the 2018 Olympics in Korea's resort town of Pyeongchang. Polly reports.
Korea has sent its best to the Winter Games with figure skating stars Kim Hae-jin and Park So-yeon expected to impress judges and fans worldwide. Dubbed the Yeona Kids, the Paris 16-year-olds will carry the torch following the retirement of skating champion Kim Yeona.
At times, I think about what I would do if Kim Yeona was to retire. I will try to work even harder in the future in order to earn great results.
Freestyle skier Choi Jae-woo will be hitting the moguls over the next week, marking his first time representing Korea at the Olympics. Voted Rookie of the Year by the International Ski Federation in 2013, Choi says he's just getting started.
I'll get a second chance to participate at the Olympics in Pyeongchang, and therefore I believe I'll become more experienced after competing in Sochi. Here's hoping that I'll get a better result.
Meanwhile, Korea's first Olympic snowboarder Kim Ho-jun will be returning to the men's halfpipe event. Kim says he's determined to go further this year after lessons learned at the Vancouver Winter Games in 2010.
Our goal is to reach the finals at the Sochi Games. Going forward, we will most certainly win the gold medal in Pyeongchang.
And Yoon Sung-bin is set to race in the men's skeleton event, riding high on his recent victory. Yoon became the first ever Korean skeleton slider to win gold while competing at the 2014 International Cup in Whistler, Canada.
Rather than focusing on winning at the Sochi Olympics, we also have to look farther down the road. I think it will build experience, and I will try to show everyone what I've been doing this summer.
With 71 world-class athletes, Team Korea will compete in 6 main sports with the goal of capturing at least 4 gold medals and achieving a top 7 finish at the Winter Olympics. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
Now, the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics kicked off in glorious style on Friday with an elaborate opening ceremony for what is expected to be the most expensive Olympic Games in history, costing in excess of $50 billion and far exceeding the 2008 Beijing Summer Games, a record many said would never be beaten. Now, according to various surveys, the astronomical investment, however, will not boost Russia's national economy much, but it may create a lasting legacy for the city of Sochi and the southern Krasnodar region of Russia, which will benefit from improved services that may attract businesses in the future. Well, for a more in-depth look at the economic impact of the Winter Olympics, we're joined live in the studio by Dr. Kim Byung-ju, the head of KLMP Consulting, and of course our regular commentator on this program. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
Now, I think any country hosting the Olympics is striving to promote a more polished version or image of them worldwide.
Right.
But and it looks like it's especially the case for Russia with its grand opening ceremony and whatnot. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I have to agree with that point that you just shared. Russia is back. That is the message that Russia, the country, wanted to send to the world, according to or quoting the Economist of London here. And basically, because the Olympic Games itself are as much about the country as also the leader himself, Vladimir Putin himself. I mean, he came back against all odds, all this controversy about his election or re-election or coming back to his office. And the past few years, it's been tough, especially because of all this protest against his reign. His recent victory over the UKOS's chief, Khodorkovsky, for instance, how he was released in Germany, how that case was packed up, basically. And his struggle with the Pussy Riot, for instance, all this the inside unhappiness about his rule itself. Also, internationally speaking, Syrian intervention, how that was prevented under the Russia's initiative. So politically speaking, I mean, this is good time or bold time for Vladimir Putin himself here. And also thinking that this is the second Olympiad game in the country itself. Back in 1980, that was the Soviet Union that hosted Moscow Summer Olympics. And this is the first one actually for this current Russia that's holding this game itself. So this was a very important occasion for the country itself, and a lot has been writing for the country and its leader and all that. So supposedly, the hope was, I think the game itself was secured back in 2008. And that was a time when Russia was going very strong based on this oil power and all that kind of stuff. And at that time, the vision was that by year 2014, this will be an important occasion to announce the new Russia to the world.
And the opening ceremony, for one, did very well. Just that.
Except a small accident. There.
Right, except for the asterisk for the Sochi Winter Olympics. But international observers do not seem to too optimistic about that take.
Right, indeed. As you briefly mentioned at the beginning here, basically various sources, including European Bank of Reconstruction and Development and even Moody's, they were all saying the benefits will probably focus on that Sochi and around a region only. I mean, by the way, we're talking about the world's largest country in terms of land mass here, so it's very difficult to expect this kind of Olympic Games to have a countrywide effect, and that's exactly what they're pointing out. Some of the positive side, these reports are talking about 1996 Atlanta Summer Olympic Games, after which the city Atlanta became a regional hub and regional center there. They're saying Sochi could actually have a chance like that in a positive sense, but on the more negative side, because the country is so big, they're saying the impact will be limited for sure. And some people are saying actually a Russian economy as a whole may suffer some negatives in the short run, because all this spending that has gone into, if they're seeking job growth, basically because the job market in Russia is a place where they have a low unemployment rate, it could actually raise the wage itself. So there is such concern. And overall, the way the money was spent in Sochi itself, a lot of critics are saying the way it was spent not in a very efficient way, and some people have been talking about corruptions and all that. So it will have a lingering effect. And credit rating agencies such as Moody's are saying they will have to actually see the prospect for those companies, Russian companies that have invested in this game negatively in the future, because return on their investment may not be very big. In order to expect positive return on their investment, Sochi area has to have now like 3 times more of the tourists than they had before after the games. And they're saying that's not going to be very realistic. So as a whole, the immediate impact or short-term impact in terms of benefits this country can expect out of this game may not be that positive, they're saying.
Now, the Russian, the currency, the local currency has been falling in value for some time.
Right.
Now, will the Olympics at least help it recover some value?
That is a big concern. Actually, the current level of ruble itself is lowest in 5 years. And last year alone, it has been showing about 10% decrease. Of course, it's a fall from a very high point. During the past like a decade or so, Russia has shown a lot of inflation and a lot of money going into the country because of the oil richness. And at that time, ruble was going very strong, and now it's going down. And a lot of people are wondering the question, as you mentioned, whether ruble will recover after this Olympic Games. But experts are saying it's not going to be Olympic Games that will make much of a difference. Rather, the first quarter current account balance itself, which will probably have some positive impact that will increase the value itself, but it will have little to do with the Olympic Games itself.
Now, looking at the bigger picture, how is Russia doing in terms of its economy?
Well, the thing is, fundamentally speaking, Russian economy, as I implied, has been very much based upon the energy exports so far. And energy side, the picture is not very good because of the shale gas prospect, especially that's driven strongly by the United States. So those people who are investing in the Russian economy or staking in the Russian economy, they do not seem to have any promising possibility that they see because of this expected long-term decline for any kind of heavily oil-producing country. Russia is one of them for sure. So indeed, this energy export dependency itself is a very big concern. And expected growth this year is not going to be as strong. They're talking about IMF and OECD, they're talking about Russian growth about 2%, which will be 1% lower than world average itself. So it's not a strong growth that they're talking about. And as a whole, of course, the economy itself faces a big structural problem, such as like its nature, where it's heavily based on network, and some critics say corruptive relations and all that kind of stuff.
Right, not too transparent in their works.
Right.
Now, how should Russia then deal with these challenges? I mean, do you have any hope that the Olympics will actually, bring about the kind of changes and reforms that most people think that country needs?
They say in Korea, after 1988 Olympics, we saw a huge surge of democracy and a new kind of transformation for the country itself. I don't think we're expecting the same thing for Russia itself. And Russia is a country that faces 2 fundamental challenges. On the political side, post-Putin era, whether after his 2 terms this time, probably he'll get his 2nd term, right, next time. And after that, what happens? Is he going to become a prime minister again and then come back again for a 2-term president and set up a permanent rule there, or what? System building, institution building for democracy is a critical task for the country itself, for the political aspect, and the economy. Going beyond the energy export-dependent economy, they really got to build their own market and business foundations to make the country more vibrant and sustainable. So Russia is a huge country in the world, one of the major powers that faces fundamental challenges on the political side as well as the economic side.
Well, regardless of whether for the better or for the worse, Russia will be on the highlight of the next 2 weeks, and definitely what everyone worldwide will be watching for the next 2 weeks. So we will have to wait and see how this translates for the better or for the worse for the Russian economy and the country itself.
That's true, definitely.
All right, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, thank you so much for today. We will continue with our Russia Olympics coverage tomorrow.
Will do.
Let's now turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center for the latest forecast. Michelle, we had snow all weekend, but now that the weekend is over, here in Seoul at least, we seem to be having a nice sunny day.
I know, right? But because of that, I actually got to stay home and rest.
Well, that sounds nice, Michelle. Now, with the Olympics going on, you have to tell us what the weather is like over in Sochi.
Yes, Kanyang, it's mild day in Sochi today with a daytime high of 14 degrees, which is fairly nice, and most importantly is zero precipitation. Now, going back to the weather forecast in Korea, we have a nice sunny day ahead with a few clouds drifting by along with snow flurries on and off throughout the day. But the snow is still continuing down in Gangwon province. For more details, let's move over to our satellite map. We're continuously expecting snow up to 20 centimeters in Gangwon province and Gyeongsang province until tonight, and very little snow flurries all over the nation. Now, going over to the readings, the temperatures are continuously rising. Seoul will top out at 4 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak to 7 and 4 degrees respectively. Now, down on Jeju Island, we can expect some amount of snow. Dokdo Island will peak up to -3, while Mount Kumgang tops out at -11. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
All right, thank you, Michelle, for that. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. But stay tuned to ARIRANG. We have a lot more coming your way on Early Edition at 6.